Hello, welcome to Affirmative Interaction. There's like a lot of light brown color and white between these screens, which for some reason I appreciate. But thank you so much for joining us for another episode. Well, what a time to be alive. We have had a little bit of trouble figuring out a new time, a new schedule, things of that nature. But those kinks have been worked out, and we are here to do our show. So if you are joining us, thank you very much for returning for season 2. Thank you, Donnell, live from NY. If you are watching, please let us know where you're watching from. And also, if you want, you can write down your social security number in that same comment too. So Logan, Esther, Adrian, how are you guys doing? So good to see you again.
Good.
I think you're muted.
They're muted, but I keep getting phone calls about asking for my social security number, and I keep giving it to them, hoping something exciting happens in my life. So
it is tax season, so you never know. The IRS is just reaching out.
I'm like, I didn't buy that.
Well, very good. So we're gonna mix it up today. Thankfully, we're not even gonna say the guy's name, which is gonna be nice. We're gonna talk about something different this week, and we're really gonna just be discussing what happened yesterday. So, as you all know, yesterday was a big day, and the Super Bowl is all but a official national holiday. Every single time the Super Bowl happens, I feel like I should have the day off the next day. So I'm not a sports guy, but Adrian, I know you are. Logan, I know you are. Esther, maybe you pretend to be. So guys, tell me, as a person that doesn't watch Super Bowl, I want to know what
you didn't
happened.
Watch it at all, Jordan?
I watched maybe like 30 seconds, and then I switched to something else.
Nice.
What'd you switch to?
We were watching this TV show called Lupin on Netflix, which is very good.
The French one.
You gotta read?
The French one. Oh, man, you guys got to watch it. It's so good.
Video books.
At one time.
I love video books.
I do not like video books. I do not like them.
They're not video books.
It's a video book. If I gotta read it, it's a video book. I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about subtitles. Oh, I think Logan is one of those English supremacy guys. But other than that, great show.
Yep, I'm an English supremacist.
English language supremacist.
No, I'm just dumb. I'm dumb. That's the problem with the whole situation. I can't do all that at one time. I'm like, what happened visually? Because I'm trying to read, and it's just too much.
I will say, though, it being in French definitely helps because it's such a beautiful language. So it was just really nice to hear these guys talk. I will say that the English dub that is available for the show is absolutely horrid. Never do that. Please don't.
Nice.
Don't. Anyway, Super Bowl. I think it was the Chiefs and the Buccaneers.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Buccaneers won. I know a really old guy. We're ageist on this show. Just kidding. I know Tom Brady. He won another ring after winning a ton previously. So fill in those details for me.
Yeah, so this is Brady's 7th Super Bowl win, which is kind of wild. He played for the Patriots for like 18, 19 years. And a lot of people went down. Brady and like the coaches and management just had a lot of disagreement. And they weren't bringing enough talent to the Patriots, or adequate talent rather, to compete in the AFC, where you're starting to see these other juggernauts starting to grow. So Brady tips, then he heads to a really nice, in theory, place in Tampa. They've got a lot of young weapons or offense. Their defense is really young and aggressive. Mm-hmm. And they went up against the Chiefs with probably the best quarterback in the game right now, Patrick Mahomes. And it was good. I was very much into it actually until Logan pointed out how full the crowd was, and then that's when it really, like,
That was before tip-off or kickoff.
I know, like the anticipation was growing, and then as that was happening, I was like, I know they said everyone got the vaccine that was present, but I mean, I don't know if that is accurate.
No, it was like 7,500 or something of the 27,000. So it was like a test trial period, see if the 7,500 get sick, when they're in the 27,000.
So just a gigantic experiment on how to spread COVID.
Very American.
I think that's one of the things that is one of the things that surprised me is just seeing this on the television. For a split second, I forgot there was a pandemic because there were so many people in the stadium. It's wild.
People that flew in, that like they traveled the whole way there, and like when you kind of put that into context, it's like this is just not a good look. And they brought in Biden to try to make his little message about being safe. Like it's too late. After the Bucks won, everybody went downtown and was partying apparently, and the governor had to come up with a statement, which was like, well, you knew this was going to happen, so it's just.
It's partying when a bunch of white kids celebrate a Super Bowl win, but it's rioting when people are protesting injustice. I love that that news bleep today where we see, people got wild burning down buildings, and I'm like having
those
a
crazy
good time.
kids.
I've never had fun and burnt a building down. I've never been like, yo, happy birthday, Mom. Your bed's on fire. That's just not. But I guess due to my complexion, I could get away with that. I'd be like, I was just celebrating.
There you go, bro. You're
having a good time.
I mean, start to finish, I did enjoy Her, America the Beautiful, and then
that was
she blew it out of the park, and then how do I brain my own? Yeah, the national anthem. It was just like, how did it go from really good to maybe I don't know if I want to say better, but just like also really good. Usually you don't get two really goods in a Super Bowl, but it was fun to watch that.
Yeah. And then I always look at her last name, Amanda Gorman. Gorman. She did like a spoken word, which was really nice. So, I'll give some credits where credit's due. Like NFL, you did your thing. You brought in a lot of Black women specifically, which on one of the grandest sports stages in America in the Super Bowl, like you got a lot of eyes watching on them. So I'm gonna give them their credit in that area. Appreciate that for sure.
That's interesting, Adrian, that you bring that up, because I am aware that there is a other side of the coin for the NFL. And Logan, maybe you can speak to this because I know you mentioned this a little bit when we were talking earlier before the show, in how the NFL was really trying, through their messaging at the Super Bowl, was really trying to push their progressiveness and how they're inclusive. And they, even with Amanda Gorman, they invited her to do the poem. But at the same time, not that long ago, just a couple of years ago, they completely blackballed Colin Kaepernick. And I want you guys, especially as football fans, like, are you guys, for you, is there, like, what do you see in that tension? Do you see that struggle with you being a fan yourself even?
I mean, it frustrates me for sure as a football fan. I think I kind of I remember in 2016 when Colin Kaepernick started to kneel, I dropped out of my fantasy football league as the people started to kind of boycott. I was like, hey, due to some of this, I was just like, I don't think, and it might have been the next season because he kind of did that for a full season, and then he couldn't get a job, and I was like, I think I'm kind of done with the NFL for a little bit. And I was a Rams fan, and the Rams were getting good then, and so it was kind of like a weird situation for me. And then things with Colin Kaepernick kind of maybe like got a little bit smoothed over when he sued for basically saying, look, you blacklisted me and you colluded to do so. And is what frustrated me yesterday is, I'm not going to lie, I had the game on. I was, partaking in the game. The NFL has done things to try to progress some of this, but you saw it. You see it with the black women that they brought to do the national anthem in America the Beautiful, and the black women that came and did spoken word. They're kind of pushing for this. But, when you really look at the field, you've got Antonio Brown that's got pending charges. He's going to end up in court one day for sexual assault of his trainer, as well as an assault and battery charge that he got basically in like a Pee Wee football league situation. And then you've got Tyreek Hill on the Chiefs. Both guys were very much highlighted. Antonio Brown caught a touchdown. Tyreek Hill, he domestic violence situation. I think when he was at Oklahoma playing, but where they said that he beat his girlfriend like without recognition at the time. But Antonio Brown, this happened in September of 2019 when his charges came. They threw him on Dancing with the Stars, try to give him like a redemption tour to get his name back up. And it's what's frustrating to me is Colin Kaepernick has never done anything to belittle people, to tear things down. The worst thing Colin Kaepernick ever did was wear a pair of socks with a pig on them. That's like the worst. And still to this day, we see no opportunity for him to be in. I don't care if it's on fields. He doesn't get called in booths to do calls. He doesn't get called to halftime shows to do any, voiceover. They don't even ask him to say like, hey, how's the progress of your rights movement that he's a part of? Like the NFL basically has said, yeah, we're going to try to push unity, but we don't actually care about the person that brought forth the call. And it's just frustrating because, the Buccaneers, I've hated the Buccaneers for years because they had Jameis Winston. And if you've ever watched the documentary, The Hunting Ground, talking about rape and sexual assaults on college campuses, Jameis Winston is highlighted in that movie by a young woman that was roofied and led to his dorm room. Just like really terrible stories. And they kind of like just sweep this stuff under the rug. But then when someone tries to actually come out and bring positive change, they're like, yeah, we are going to blacklist you and ensure that we never give you the opportunity to make right a problem that actually needs to be made right, which abusing your spouse doesn't really need to be like, you don't need a redemption tour for that. You need to serve your time, and then hopefully you can work back into society as you've rehabbed and rehabilitated. But just kind of frustrating from that point of view for me personally.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, it really seems like the NFL last night, at least, is taking a lot of performative measures to show unity. But when it comes down to it, they're not doing the hard work of creating sustainable change.
Well, yeah, I think that is a tactic that any corporation kind of uses. Anything that kind of diffuses whatever tension they see affecting their finances, or tension that is affecting people within the organization. And you had a lot of Black players that were very vocal, very adamant, and very frustrated with the measures that the league took when it came to handling not just the conversation of racial equity, the lack of Black coaches and assistant coaches within the NFL, but the way that they handled Kaepernick in general. And I think Logan brings up a good point that it shows, like, they showed their hand in terms of what they will tolerate and what they feel goes a bit too far. I love Baltimore Ravens in the 2000s, their defense, but like there's a lot of violent history you had with Ray Lewis, and then Ray Rice, Kareem Hunt. I'm just off the top of my head naming a bunch of guys who are known to be violent or have domestic violent disputes. And then within a few years, all is kind of forgotten, or they're reinstated in the NFL, and everything's cool. The interesting thing about Kaepernick, which I think people forget, the league likes to try to use this as a thing of like it's a distraction to the team, right? Like that's the narrative that a lot of people like to use because it took everything away from football. But actually, in actuality, I don't remember the name of the award, but Kaepernick won it twice in terms of essentially the award means that you were the best teammate in the locker room. And he won that award the season that he was protesting. And so if you're talking about a distraction, it doesn't add up to what is being told from the literal guys in the locker room. And yeah, it's not just the performative aspect that I think is frustrating to me. And like hats off to Amanda Gorman, to her and to Jasmine Sullivan and their own individual, right? Like they killed it. But I think it's hard to not look at the NFL and say, we'll throw them a bone and hopefully they'll just kind of cut it out afterwards. Because throughout all of these efforts that they've tried to implement, like incentives to hire more Black coaches, Black head coaches, there has never been even a mention of Colin Kaepernick's existence. Even after all of the protests that happened in the summer, which is kind of what sparked a lot of all sports, Colin Kaepernick has not been mentioned by any sports organization, which is it's just wild because you constantly have to juxtapose his methods versus what you saw over the summer, and everyone was screaming, no, you don't need to be violent in the streets when you're protesting. But we gave you guys that. Like we gave you someone like Colin Kaepernick, where he didn't say a word publicly throughout the game. He was quiet. He met with a former Army soldier to discuss what are appropriate ways for him to protest. So he took all the responsible measures, but even still, his existence is just kind of erased from everything that happened within the NFL. And I think that's what's kind of frustrating, because it's like this whole thing that they're doing started from him. And to not even give him an apology is quite frustrating, especially when they settled, which tells you a lot about his case and the things that he and his lawyers were to have on the NFL. To not even acknowledge him, I think, is probably the most discouraging thing, because, and like about a year and a half ago, his agent said that he still wanted to play, and then he hosted the public tryouts to make sure that the viewers, regular fans, could see into the tryout to make sure, okay, did he stuck up the joint or did he actually look like a competent QB? And despite all of that, more news came out that it was still just performative and theatrics for all of these GMs that attended. I think these white GMs just don't like the unusual and unique tension that the conversation of race brings to any corporation.
Yeah, I think with those players, they can just say, hey, I know you've got a charge or this. If you just put your head down and be quiet, we'll let you play. But with Kaepernick, they're like, wait, he's going to speak out against systemic oppression loudly and vocally, which wasn't even loudly or vocally. He was just kneeling. Right. He's literally his whole 2016 season leading all the way to, it was like till 2018. And he didn't even do an interview. He refused to do interviews because he was like, y'all are just going to misconstrue my words. My message is clear. I'm kneeling to raise awareness for systemic oppression, and that's what I'm doing. And it's like, but they'll take a guy like Antonio Brown that's doing like a redemption tour to be like, hey, if you just put your head down and be quiet, we'll put you on our team because you're talented, right? And we'll make money off your back, even though we don't really care about your past, which is kind of just, it's just weird vibes. And this isn't to say I don't like those guys to get redemption. Like I actually, want people to find their peace. I want them to not be abusers. Like you don't want this in society. But at the same point, I don't think enabling them to and empowering them to go right back to their same spaces is very good path to rehab. But
yeah,
I think I feel like there's two different things based on what you guys are saying. I think when we're talking about the Colin Kaepernick thing, I mean, and the NFL's attempt to sort of highlight Black voices and Black experiences, they're really only willing to do it to the extent that it won't make people upset. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's very exciting to see Amanda Gorman get her shine and to see Jasmine Sullivan and her and all those people get their shine. We also know, like, nobody's really going to be mad. Like that, like that's like a very comfortable way to right. Like that's a very comfortable, non-disruptive way to say or appear like you are championing Black voices. Whereas Colin Kaepernick was making people very angry. And so they didn't want to risk what it would cost them to side with him.
Yeah.
I think when we're talking about the players who have histories of domestic violence and intimate partner violence, I think as a society, we're just pretty comfortable with the fact that women are the victims of abuse. We don't like to see it, but we're very uncomfortable with the visual of women being the victims of abuse. But we're pretty comfortable with the fact that it happens, especially when powerful people and powerful men do it. We just sort of take for granted that that is what they do. And that's why it takes people being forced to look at it to get them to do anything about it. Like with Bill Cosby, with R. Kelly, it literally takes the culture and society being forced to face it in a very confrontational way to get public opinion to shift enough that powerful people benefit more from holding these people accountable than they do from ignoring it. And when it happens so frequently within sports, it's almost impossible to not normalize it. It just happens so much, and people are not going to force us to confront it in any way that would shift public opinion in the way that we'd like it to. And so it just becomes normalized because it happens so often. And the NFL knows people are not going to be upset enough to do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what's it kind of sucks, and I felt my own like conflict when we were watching it unfold like in 2016, 2017. Like for the first part is the idea of fans saying sports politics out of sports is just ridiculous. Like if you do not see how those two have intersected literally since sports began in this country, you are willfully ignorant. Regardless of what sport you choose, you are going to find some aspect of a socio-political intersection because you're dealing with people like that. You go down history, you're going to find it. Period. The second thing is, I struggled, and like Jordan, you know this. Like football is like a big thing in our family. Like from my grandfather to my dad to Jordan's dad to now like me and Gio. Like every Sunday, it doesn't matter what's going on, like we're watching the Bills play. And so this idea of like a tradition that was connected to like a sport that like I love over every other sport, and then to see a kind of social media call to boycott the NFL, I never really knew what to do there. Because I also didn't know, like, is protesting the right move in terms of what, because if Kaepernick wants to play in the NFL, an owner isn't going to just hire him because millions of people are protesting. It will hurt the NFL's ratings, but I'm not sure what that'll do, because we saw that as people protested and the kind of charge for them to acknowledge Kaepernick they hosted the practice workout, and then a news outlet comes out and says that it was performative, as in they had no intention to really hire him. And in fact, I think it was the Seahawks and the Ravens who an article came out and said that they spoke to Cap's agent and asked, "We're willing to seriously, like, legitimately work him out, but the contingency, I guess, is he still going to kneel?" And the agent said yes. They never heard from the teams again. And so I always felt conflicted because I didn't always know what is the best way for me to support Kaepernick right now. And he was kind of quiet, right? Like, I think what is interesting about his personality is I don't think he intended this to blow up in the way that he did, with all of these different schools kneeling and these different sports players kneeling, and then it bleeding out into other national sports. And so I do wonder if it was, I'm using my right to protest, but like I'm still a guy that just loves football and wants to play. And I never knew, with my love for football, how am I to accurately support this individual who also shares love of football, but at the same time, like, support his cause. And I think that was a conflict that a lot of people were having. How do I still uphold this sport that is clearly doing a publicity stunt, and then at the same time is ignoring the existence of a Black player that everybody loves? But then, they did the incentive to hire Black coaches, and the entire Buccaneers coaching staff, I think apart from the head coach, was Black. That's like the first time that's ever happened. And so that incentive worked, like that incentive to hire those people, they came in, and that's the first time it happened in NFL history. And so there's always this conflict of, is this a sufficient response that these organizations are giving? I don't know. That's where I was really conflicted for a while.
Definitely. And, I think there is a lot to be said in really trying to figure out what the best way forward is when dealing with such big and expansive organizations like the NFL, because the NFL has a very far reach. So for those that want to see change, they really have to weigh, do I stay and try to create the change and transform this organization? Because it's powerful. It's literally it's a blank on the word, but it's something that is ingrained in American culture. So should I push the NFL to be more diverse, or should I leave in protest? And it's really hard to say that one method is not legitimate. I think it really might come down to what someone is comfortable with and what they want to do. But I think that's definitely something, there's a lot there to talk and to think about. But moving on, we do want to just ask everyone what their Yelp review is for the GOP currently. Joe Biden became president a couple of weeks ago, and it's been, I would say, political leanings and affiliations aside, the daily energy in our relationship with our government has changed dramatically, in my opinion, because there is truly something that we really don't have to worry about anymore. Waking up and then seeing this new blurb from the past president literally blowing up our group chat, and we're just talking about it all day because it's so chaotic and so wild. But without 45, we're kind of left with the GOP in its current state. So I'm going to ask you guys.
45. I'm just glad Trump's gone. I just, like, every time I hear that, I'm like, oh, I forgot, dude's gone. Let's go. I get like happy again because it's like kind of quiet. I like it. Sorry.
So No, you're good. So, I mean, what do you think about how the GOP is existing currently? What are your just initial thoughts on that?
I mean, it's kind of funny watching them flap in the water right now because I think they realized, what was it, last week, that the Democrats were going to pass through the stimulus package. And so there were 10 Republicans that were like, yo, could you meet with us? And there was like a $1.9 trillion stimulus package that the Democrats were hoping for. And the Republicans were like, what about this $600 billion one where we don't give any money to anyone? It was like $600 or something. And I was like, cool, what's that going to do for, people in need? But I did think it was kind of funny because they're realizing that the only way they're going to do anything is through unity, which is the thing that they refused to do for the last 4 years. And now they're like begging the GOP or the Democrats to do that. And it's kind of funny to watch how inconsistent the GOP is right now.
That reminds me, there was a big Super Bowl commercial. I think it was Jeep and Bruce Springsteen. So I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan. But watching the commercial and reading about it, and his call to unity and bringing the country together, I can't lie. I have to say, it really makes me think if a lot of us just have a little bit of amnesia of what lack of unity what lack of unity there has been and who's caused it, or we're just so desperate to see some sort of connectivity, we'll call unity no matter the circumstance. So, Esther, I mean, I kind of feel like you have an eye roll coming. So I want to know what your thoughts are. She's so over it right now. She's so over it.
I just feel like unity is not real. Like they talk about unity like it means like a win for us all, like coming together so we can all push forward. But unity, when you have one side of the aisle that is undermining the very livelihood and survival and existence of marginalized communities, basically just means total losses all around for anybody in those communities. Like, there's just no, like, I'm always like, what do you mean? Like, what is unity? And
it's whiteness.
Right. Like, literally, like, in this climate, like, what is that? It doesn't exist. You have to pick a side. That's where we're at. You have to pick a side. Let people choose. We are not going to get the Trump people back. Let them go. Let them do what they're going to do. And we just have to galvanize everybody else and leave them behind. Literally, that's where I'm at. I'm like, we're not getting that group of people back. It's too late for them, for most of them anyway. We should not be focusing our energy on catering to them to try to create some sort of unity at the expense of everybody else. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me politically. It doesn't seem like a smart political strategy based on the way that this last election looked. And it's definitely not practical for people's everyday lives. Like, I think even with what Logan was just saying with the bill, like, what would unity have been in that instance? It would have been nothing for us. It would have meant we all lose and we get nothing so that they can say we're all being unified. It doesn't make any sense to me.
They're fiscally responsible now.
Like, all of a sudden.
I know, right?
Yeah, after Trump spent more than any president in history. But, fiscal responsibility.
Yeah. I was talking to Esther about this the other day, where the New York Times came out with an article that the title, I think, was "Ease Up on the Executive Orders, Biden." And man, I was like, so I read the article and they're talking about how the need to push things to Congress had a much more long-lasting effect than just an executive order, which, 4 years, if they lose, someone else can come in and just kind of revoke that EO. The problem is kind of what you guys are saying. Biden isn't an idiot, right? He knows that if I bring a bill to revoke the transgender military ban to Congress, it's literally going to get split down the middle. What is the purpose of spending weeks upon weeks to go through a process that I know is not going to get any Republican or GOP support? So this idea of going through Congress, it doesn't work when you have one side who is pushing policies that harm marginalized groups. like the idea of when things were part of the conversation we had was like during like the crime bill with Clinton and how like you had politicians from both sides. This was like gold for them, right? Like they, as a Democrat, were able to pull political points from both sides of the spectrum because everyone was so on board with wanting to be tough on crime. So it doesn't matter. It didn't matter if you were Democrat or Republican. You were going to be tough on crime. The problem with that is a marginalized group was the one that was affected the most. Anytime politicians talk of unity, it is always the progressive side pushing for equity that has to take the loss. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is the most frustrating part of it is that whenever they talk of unity for Biden, all they're asking of is don't try to push progressive policies through or progressive legislations because that's going to make our feelings get hurt. So Green New Deal, all that stuff, it doesn't matter. Things on racial equity, no. Anything that is going to upset us, throw it out the window. And so we're left with what? A compromise that caters to white moderates that literally didn't even help Biden get elected. And so we're wondering, like, which demographic are we contributing to? And when you look at the last two elections, which demographics have been the most effective in either letting a Democratic president lose or a Democratic president win? And that, I think, is where the Dems need to take a long look in the mirror is who is the demographics that's helping you win right now? Is it the people who want things to go back to quiet? Or is it the people that are giving you their vote so that you can get real change done?
So let me ask you guys this question then. Do you think unity is an ideal worth pursuing?
Just in general or like in politics?
In politics.
We define it real quick?
Sure, let me see. I would say unity.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Esther.
I mean, I would like to hear how we want to define it, but my gut reaction is no, just because. Well, I mean, okay, because I think there is like a pathway to unity, but I just don't think that people are really willing to do it. Like, if you really want unity, then people on the right and people in white communities need to do the work of educating their people to see that they're wrong. Like that, we could get unity that way if you want to put in the work to be like, actually, we've been wrong for the past 50 years, just repeatedly, like since Reagan, just repeatedly wrong again and again and again. And now we admit that we are wrong and we want to do the work and help you guys all see how we were wrong, how harmful our policies have been, and how we can now unite with the left to push everything forward. Like, that to me is worth pushing for. But anything short of that is not. And what's crazy is that when people try to do that type of work, they get called divisive. Like, when you try to do that type of work of like educating people on like the realities of life and our history and the truth, people call that divisive. But it's like, no, actually no, because if we could get everybody on the same page, just historically of what has happened and what we are saying, then we could actually be united. But we can't be united until we do that.
It's like that. I remember the senator's name, the one from Pennsylvania, when he was criticizing AOC, essentially saying that like his base is not one that would respond well. Man.
Wait, are we live? What's going on right now? What are we doing?
We live and thriving.
We live and thriving, bro.
That's crazy. How y'all doing, man? I'm sorry I'm so late, man. Just, you know.
Oh, you're late? Wow, I didn't notice.
When you're the head black person in charge on campus, you know, sometimes you just get pulled in. Sometimes you just get pulled into things, you know. I apologize.
Yeah.
I've never.
It
been
happens,
that
man. It
black person in
happens.
Yeah, sorry, Logan. You don't qualify. I apologize. not in the cards for you, bro.
So I do like what Curtis said. Curtis says unity is absolutely a worthy goal right after a long list of more important values that the GOP doesn't share.
Yeah.
And then Emmanuel Leonard says they don't want to push progressive, and by they he means Republicans. They don't want to push progressive policies, but they aren't even offering Democrats anything to work with. You know, I think that's such a good point because a lot of the times you would see individuals from the GOP push back on executive orders. And I think it's super easy to condemn executive orders because you can spin that in a quick way to say the president is abusing his power. He's doing things without any oversight. He's not being a part of the conversation. But correct me if I'm wrong, I have not heard GOP members offer any sort of halfway, any sort of meeting ground, any sort of let's meet in the middle. I will compromise on this and I would love for you to compromise on that. It's really more of, from what I've seen, we just don't want to do what you are offering.
Because they deny the existence of the things that a lot of Democrats are fighting for. Like you have people that deny the existence of climate change. You have people that deny the existence of systemic racism. And so the question is always going to be for Democrats, how am I supposed to compromise and unify with a party that is denying the existence of the things I'm fighting for? Like I think it comes down to what Esther's saying. Like the only way to unify is to educate your base into showing that these things are real. Because if that doesn't happen, then what are we doing here? You know, like it'll all be talk, and in the end, nothing will get done. So.
Yeah, unity too, like, and it's funny because we talk in terms of Democrat, Republican. Like, I would say that if we went down the laundry list of Democratic senators, a lot of us would disagree with an astronomical amount of things that they believe in. And so, like, most of us, I think, vote Democratic because we find it to be just more aligning with us. But a lot of us, I don't know any of us that were Biden supporters before, you know, everyone else fell out of the race, and we've said that many times. But it's funny with the GOP because they think unity means instead of saying Black Lives Matter, it's saying all lives matter, and they reject the whole concept that all lives matter was literally created as a movement to discredit and continually marginalize the movements of Black people. Like, that's why it exists. It's not a thing. It's just a saying to say, like, let's not say Black Lives Matter because systemic racism isn't real and this marginalization doesn't exist. And it's hilarious to me because it's like, that's not unity. That's just us saying what you want us to say because you think it sounds better. And that's the same thing with climate change. And it's like this kind of a ridiculous amount of nonsense that kind of exists. Like, unity isn't let's give less to poor people and more to small businesses or to the wealthy. Like, that's not unity. That's just benefiting the people that are going to vote you back into office. Like, it's kind of funny because unity isn't a real thing. It's just GOP saying, like, this is what we think and our traditional values think. So would you join us for a little bit? And then you can have whatever we decide to, like, give you. And it's just kind of nonsense, the whole idea of unity. Ironic to that Super Bowl commercial, a white guy around crosses talking about the middle of America and calling for unity was just like the most ironically tone deaf, stupid commercial I've ever seen. As far as this, it's like Bruce Springsteen, an old, probably prejudiced white dude telling people to be unified around a cross and like a flag and middle of America. And it's just
Whoa. Time out. Do not come for the boss, all right? Whoa.
I missed that.
Chill,
I totally missed that.
Yo,
y'all didn't see that commercial? I texted the chat about it. Adrian and I were laughing about it. But.
Oh, yeah.
Look, man,
I'm still with Cap, so I ain't watch any of that, dog. I'm sorry, I missed it all.
No, he watched.
I didn't watch, bro.
Adrian,
I'm talking about Cap.
I think Adrian and Logan said that they enjoy football more than social justice, something like that. I don't remember. It was early in the show. Show.
I did.
Oh man, I love Jeep. I'm gonna buy one now. Anyway, I think it is Actually, Mike, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. We're right now we're talking about, is unity something in terms of our political situation right now? Is that something that is worth striving for, considering, Democrats having a lot of the power to make change and Republicans being the ones to say we need to come together?
I don't know. I mean, unity is a funny word. I feel like politically, unity's, and maybe this point was already brought up, but I feel like the word unity is only used when Republicans are not in power, bro. Like they lose the White House, they lose both chambers of Congress, and well, maybe with the exception of when President Obama got elected the first time, because McConnell was, basically a staunch oppositionist and all that type of thing. But I think my pops is being disrespectful. Okay. All right, I'm going to get back to that, but let's talk about the fact that my pops is like the wokest Adventist in Adventism, but this dude couldn't stop watching football. Even like when Kaepernick was taking a knee, this dude kept watching the Giants. And what was so funny is like that was the year when they like only won one game. It was hilarious. But
Yikes.
anyway, so that dude's not as woke as y'all think he is.
He's gonna go. First of all, he's gonna go crazy in the comments now. So I'm just prepared for that.
That's the last. You're wild. That's the last comment of his. We're amplifying, but yeah, I just hate the fact that like the word unity is only used like on the heels of Republicans just doing something wild, crazy. Like, I don't know that I can be unified with people who couldn't accept the results of a free and fair election and who basically enabled a insurrection and then had like really conciliatory energy. So now instead of holding those people accountable, you want us to be unified. Like they couldn't even, what's her? Have we talked about Queen Annan yet? What's her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene or whatever.
No, please.
We could. They were like hemming and hawing about holding her account, like removing her from committees, bro. That had to go to a vote on the floor of the House. They couldn't even do that. So it's like if you can't hold the most like egregious, insane, psychopathic members of your party accountable, i.e. people who stormed the Capitol and people who believe that 9/11 was a hoax or that these school shootings, the Parkland shooting didn't happen. And, I think she filed articles of impeachment against Biden like herself. Like
the first day.
I'd love to read what those say, if there's even like coherent sentences in those articles.
Well, if it's the QAnon crowd, it's that whole Biden touches children kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
It's like
so I mean, if you can't hold people who like hold that stuff to be true accountable, then I don't know what I'm unifying with, bro. You know what I'm saying? Are there no like rational adults in the room anymore? So it's just. And then they try to equate them with people who are progressive on policy, but aren't out here saying like insanely stupid things. Like Curtis is posting like, oh, she's just like AOC, but it's like that's just a lazy comparison, bro. Like it's not even close. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know, man. I think that the unity thing is just like a cop out, and people hide behind that, but I'd love to see what would have happened if Trump got reelected. Would they be screaming unity then? I highly doubt it, bro.
No, they'll be rubbing it in their political opponents' faces,
and
just
then,
like how they did in 2016.
Right, they were ostracizing Republicans that were speaking out against like all the absurdity. Like they were ready to just kick out Liz Cheney because she was like, essentially what are we doing here, allowing this woman to exist in Congress? Like she literally talked about in a video, she was encouraging an execution to Nancy Pelosi. Like what are we talking about here? Like literally a month ago they stormed the Capitol looking to take people down. So it's like, we cannot just think that like, oh, it's just talk. Nah, a month ago, it literally happened in real life. And so they want to talk about Dems being unified. The Republican Party isn't even unified. Like Romney already said, if you want to unify the country, every one of those Republicans that claimed the election was rigged should come out and say that it was fair, that it was accurate, that there was no hoax. But none of them have done that. And so it's like, well, what are we talking about here? Even after Biden is elected, you still have people that believe the election was stolen. And all the Republicans, with all the evidence that was presented to them, still have not come out and admitted that they were wrong. And so the unity thing is just to talk to them. It doesn't mean anything. It's just, they I don't know, bro.
It's crazy. Somebody literally tweeted me today, and you know how everybody's using that weekend meme from the halftime show where he's like, going like this. So this like random conservative dude who always tweets me, like, quote tweeted that and said, me looking for those 80 million Biden votes. And I was just like, I replied to this dude and I was like, I think they hid them in the Capitol. Did you find them when you stormed it? I don't know if he's responded yet, but it's just like, are y'all still on about this election that Trump lost convincingly? Like, what? I mean, it's crazy, bro. Are we gonna have to deal with that for 4 years?
Wouldn't be surprised if we did.
For them to believe it. Who do we need to come out?
Judges,
and say,
no.
Like a website, it's an Instagram that has one.
No one.
This has got 80 million posts.
I also feel like the unity, like when they say unity, they really just mean like compromise, right? Like, they know like we're not going to get everybody to agree, so they mean like find something in the middle, which I'd argue doesn't really exist. Like, I don't think there's really anything in the middle realistically, but also B, I'm just like, I just can't think of any time in American history where compromise was actually like beneficial to marginalized groups of people. Like I rate like literally the great compromise of American history is the thing that decided that Black people were 3/5 of a person. Like there's just like compromise is just extremely overrated. Just an overrated notion in politics in American history. And I know that theoretically that's like the idea supposedly that like the entire Constitution was built on, was like checks and balances, etc., to keep things from swinging too far in either extreme. Fine. But like in actual practice, in reality, it never works. Like it never works, and it's often not real compromise. I just think we need to let that idea go.
And like that, I don't know what is the extreme for Democrats. If you're comparing it to like QAnon, Pizzagate, Biden's a pedophile, the
Antifa at a white supremacist rally,
right? You know what I'm saying?
Protecting pastors in the street.
You know what's wild though? Like when Queen Anon was talking about how 9/11 was a hoax, it was like, wasn't that like a liberal thing? Like back in the day, like that was a left war. Yeah, that was a left wing thing, dog. And it was like y'all took that from us too. Like, I mean, what else do y'all want? It's
like I'm very surprised that the Patriots aren't all up in arms about that.
Right.
That's the thing, man. I don't get it.
When I think about it, I feel like America doesn't have the privilege of compromise because of the years it has unsuccessfully went all in on the things that matter. So when there are things like, racial justice and women's rights and taking care of the poor and the people that are disenfranchised, we've always just said, let's meet halfway on issues that deal with the betterment of other people. And then when it comes to things where we can actually compromise, like, I don't know, like the budget, or maybe, I don't know, whether to change the name of Space Force or not, whatever. When it comes to things where we can actually compromise, we can't. Because every single time we've compromised, it's always cost someone else way too much than it should have.
Yeah.
Well, the GOP compromised back in, what was it, late October and early November when they decided to hold off on that Supreme Court instead of rushing it through. So that was nice of them.
Logan, you can't say stuff like that with a straight face because I was buying every single word until you just started talking. I was like, yeah, that did happen. I do remember that.
Oh, no. Now we're at 6-3 and they don't believe in unity. That's funny because I get these messages from people. If you've noticed on my walls, some people have slowly stopped like commenting as much because they get absolutely obliterated by people. Like I felt bad for some people because I think are somewhat well-intended sometimes and just get like destroyed in my comment section. But those people have now decided to start messaging me, and which is like, oh, please don't talk to me. But they're saying like I'm very divisive because I speak out against white supremacy. And they're like, we need to come together. And I'm like, I'm just against racism. Like, that's literally all I'm mad at, right? In this, like, just racism. And they're like, well, you need to not talk about it so much. I'm like, I'm just calling out, like, how is that divisive? It's literally the opposite. It's actually very uniting to call out racism. It's like the most uniting thing we can do in the conversation of racism is to eradicate it. But they're like, we like being kind of racist. So like, let it go for a little bit. And it's just, unity doesn't exist, like Esther kind of pushed, because they don't want unity. They just want their own feelings to be justified. And that's literally all unity is to these conservative traditionalists.
Unity doesn't exist. Middle ground doesn't exist. Moderates don't exist. Moderates do not exist. That is not a real group of people. Like you are either, I was telling this to Adrian the other day, in teaching we talk about like being an anti-racist educator, and they're like, you're either an anti-racist educator, you're a teacher in opposition, or you're a teacher in opposition in disguise. There's nothing in the middle. Like there's no middle ground. The things and people that we say are in the middle are the things that are in opposition, but they're disguised as not being in opposition. Stop trying to appeal to this imaginary group of people. Stop pushing for this imaginary ideological middle ground. It doesn't exist. It's not there. All of the things in the middle are just in disguise, and they're actually things in opposition.
Listen, the longer you talk to someone who claims to be a moderate, the more you start to hear them using Republican talking points. It's like it is the same thing for any moderate that I have spent any remote time of conversation with. They start off by saying either they're moderate or they are, I guess, like absent from politics altogether. The longer the conversation goes on, the more you start to hear them using talking points directly attacking the left side of politics.
And what we call moderates now are essentially people who are fiscally conservative, right? But there's like, that's what we call them, is like people who are fiscally conservative, but like they're not, it's like with social politics, they're not siding with Trump and all of these people.
Right.
But if you are fiscally conservative, the foundation of like conservative politics in terms of the economy was just another way to push through racist policies without calling them racist. That's literally where all those things come from. We're listening to a podcast right now about David Duke running for office in like the 90s. He ran on the same platform as Reagan. Like Ronald Reagan and David Duke had the same exact platform.
Literally.
Because everybody knew that when you talk about like welfare, affirmative action, taxes, all of that stuff, it's just coded, disguised language to undermine and harm marginalized communities that had just recently been recognized as equals by the American government. Yeah. It's all a lie.
Man, both of them, if they're running on the same platform, if David Duke was running on the same platform as Ronald Reagan, then he learned the same, just like what you were saying, Esther, he learned the same masterful dog whistle tactics that Reagan used and are still used today. You know, when anyone talks about going and protecting the suburbs or law and order, you know exactly what they mean without actually hearing them say what they mean.
Yeah, and it's crazy because, you know, when Esther and I were kind of reflecting on the podcast, like now, you know, you have the Romney, you have the Liz, you have the McCains, where they're reflective of like, I can't recognize my Republican Party anymore. And you had people while David Duke was running and like winning elections in Louisiana, essentially saying the same thing. Like, I'm reflecting on, you know, the Republican Party. I can't recognize him anymore. And so it's like, it should alarm you that white supremacists consistently keep aligning with your party exclusively. And then every other decade, a demagogue comes up that is not as politically polished and says things very vulgarly, and they get into office, and it causes chaos, and it gives confidence to racists and white supremacists and neo-Nazis. That is only happening from one side. And if you have to keep spending time reflecting on why you can't recognize your party anymore, then like you have to start thinking it's not about your party, it's about your party's ideals. What is it about your party's ideals that is attracting this secluded part of the country, this part of the country that is clearly bound in their racism? What is it about your ideals that's making them so attracted to consistently vote for you for decades?
That's a good point. It's a very good
They
point.
pander. It's just this constant pandering that will always seem to happen. You know, this week it's unity. You know, when Trump ran, it was he's a businessman that's going to drain the swamp and fiscal conservatism, while he was running under this like racist ideology that basically says build the wall, undocumented people are going to come tank our economy and steal jobs, like and it kind of brought forth this whole idea, and then he just killed it again in the midterms. And then this last election, which was so funny, is Donald Trump actually got more votes by doing less, which was really weird because he actually had no campaign strategy. It was basically like, let me just go talk. I don't have a plan. I haven't done anything well in 4 years, so I'm not going to like live off of that. The economy's in the tank. And so it was just kind of funny, and more people voted for him, which was weird. It's almost like white people hate the idea of being racist so much that they'll double down to be more racist to vote for the guy. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's very confusing, but it's just a pander game. I think the Democrats do it too, but they actually try to create policy that backs up some of their pandering, as to where GOP just seems to disguise it with traditionalism. But yeah, sorry.
Well, yeah, guys. I think this definitely gives us, and everyone watching, definitely gives us a lot to think about. And we do probably next week need to talk about what maybe the Dems need to do moving forward, considering the position that they're in currently, which one would say is a positive one. So thank you for joining us for this episode of.
Wait, Jordan, are you trying to wrap us up, bro? What are you doing?
Yeah,
I thought we had more time. What's going on? You have
it's
hours,
Isn't it till? I thought it was an hour and a half.
I thought it was an hour and a half.
Yeah. What are you doing, Jordan? Come on. What's going on? You cutting the people short. What are we doing?
People not getting their money's worth.
You know what I'm saying? What's the problem? You got somewhere to be? What's up?
Oh yeah, kind of. I mean, I plan on an hour. Sorry if I forgot to mention it, but continue.
I'm just.
No,
Nixon just got here. He just get warmed up.
Part, but you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you know. Hey.
Yeah, you go ahead. See you, Jordan.
All right, see you guys.
Dirty,
Bye bye.
Hey, see you, buddy.
Oh, is he really leaving? Oh, hey.
He really did.
Wow.
He did after that.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I was kind of playing, but not really. But. How are you guys doing though? You guys doing good?
Good.
Yeah.
That's that part.
Well,
Hey, I want to hear y'all's thoughts. What'd
Huh?
you say, Esther? I'm sorry.
I was just answering Nixon's question. I'm going back to school in person in a month.
Oh wow.
Bro. Yeah.
Interesting.
Are you vaccinated?
I am getting vaccinated on Wednesday. Yeah. My first dose.
That's dope.
They're implanting the chip, y'all.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with that, you know. I don't know.
The Earth will be flat to you soon.
Oh man.
I do want to talk though, like Jordan kind of mentioned on his way out, but what do y'all think some of the things that Democrats should be focusing on now that they have the House overwhelmingly and, barring anyone trying to be a rebel, they've got the Senate on a 50-50 with Kamala as the tiebreaker. What are some of the big legislations you think we should be trying to push through?
Man, to be honest, and I don't even have like a list in front of me because I think there's some things that they need a supermajority to do, but there's a lot of stuff they can do with just the simple majority. So, I mean, it's funny, man. Like I feel like there's a couple things. Obviously, COVID's a really big issue, so the COVID relief package needs to come through soon. I don't know if there's anything more they can do about like getting the vaccine distributed better, but I just kind of feel like whatever resource that we have at our disposal to get that joint cranked out, whether that's like, commissioning some of these factories to like partner with Pfizer and Moderna to, I don't know. I mean, I'm ignorant to how that joint is put together, but whatever they can do to like make that joint happen faster, I think is really important because, to the extent that they're useful against some of the new variants as well, because I just feel like the virus is just way ahead of us and we need to catch up. And obviously we're starting like about a year behind because of Trump, but whatever we can do to try to accelerate to try to catch up is just really important because, I mean, we could see another year and a half gone very easily if we don't get a handle on this. So COVID relief and vaccine distribution are really big in my eyes. But then some of the other big ticket items that he's been talking about, whatever he can do with that simple majority, they're going to have to, the old saying, walk and chew gum at the same time. They're just going to need people to be working on different pieces of legislation, bringing them forward, preparing for the various levels of opposition. I know that the impeachment trial is coming up. They need to do that trial like efficiently and effectively and get to a resolution as quick as possible so that they can then shift focus to some of those bigger ticket legislative items. So that's sort of my feeling right now. Like just do as much as you can, as fast as you can. Obviously you want to not skip steps, but they have to be really efficient to get things done while you have this majority.
Curtis said education reform and loan forgiveness, which I 1000% agree. I feel like if Democrats want to solidify the millennial and Gen Z vote, it has to be tackling student debt. And obviously, Biden has taken some approach in climate change, which obviously he can definitely do more. But those two, I would say, have to be at the top of the list because those are the essentially like the existential threats to like being able to live and survive. And that's not hyperbole. Like to literally live and survive in many ways depends on those two things. And the fear of them not being in power for Congress, to me, that doesn't feel like a legitimate argument to not go through, like with Schumer asking Biden to executive order $50,000 student loan debt. There's always going to be elections. There's always going to be elections. And what you saw in 2020 is that those people who are literally crying out for Congress to fight against these existential threats came out in droves. The Black vote, Hispanic vote, Young people came out, like specifically Black women, they came out. And, we're like, listen, you have to know where your future vote is. What is the demographic that's going to carry you for the next 15 to 20 years? And that's it right there. It's people of color and young people, marginalized groups specifically. And so we're like, if you can act scared, but know that if you continue to be timid, for the next 2 years, that's not going to inspire people to go out and vote for you. Biden, you got that overwhelming vote primarily because people hated Trump. You were not an inspiring president, at least not for a lot of Black people. You weren't. If you want that same turnout again, you have to start doing these things and not beat around the bush, like actually do it. Or we might have another 2016 turnout, and that would just be terrible.
Yeah. Go ahead, Esther.
Oh, I was just gonna say I agree. COVID-19 is like first priority, obviously, but I feel like I'd like to see them utilize COVID-19 to also get some more long-term things in place that have been worsened due to the pandemic. Like, I feel like, everybody's been talking about how like Obamacare wasn't the end goal, right? Like, we want to do more. Let's do more. Like, now. Like, I feel like COVID-19 and like the urgency of the situation combined with having like a majority barely in Congress presents like a sort of opportunity to push through some like things that have been on our radar but are now like more urgent because of what's happening. Like healthcare, I'm thinking about, I don't know the details of what this would look like, but just thinking about things with like housing security and like rent and landlords and like there's just like all of these things that have just been, now we're really seeing like, oh, people are really living on the brink of like homelessness. People are living in instability all the time. And we're seeing like how one thing could just really like ruin people's lives, things outside of people's control. I feel like they could use COVID-19 and the bills they're pushing through to make things that aren't temporary, like things that are going to be long lasting past this, but provide people with more security in the future. So that I also agree with the student loan debt. Also, just I'm really scared about global warming. I really try not to read about it a lot, but when I do, I'm like, we only have like 7 years. That's really not like we have 7 years left to like
get married.
The situation.
Yeah.
Like that. That's it. And that's really terrifying. So we need to start doing some serious things with like holding companies accountable to the amount of waste output. Like we need stuff that I'm like if like literally if that's not in like his like within this like his top 10 things right now, like it's kind of writing him like Biden, if you don't get it done by the time the next person comes around, it's basically too late. Whoever that next person is, it's essentially too late. Like we'll have 3 years.
Yeah, that's one of those issues that's interesting because not many people are educated enough on the topic, so it gets like brushed because they're like, I'm fine. Like, yeah, it's like hotter, but sometimes it's colder. But like, so is it even global warming or is it just global?
That's part of the problem too, is like because we aren't used to living lives that are actually dependent on like the climate. Like in other places in the world, they're literally living global warming and climate change because they're dependent on nature to survive and live. In America, we don't make our decisions based on the actual like the natural environmental atmosphere, but people are literally like moving to places in Arizona where like the average temperature in the summer is not healthy. It's like way over 100 in the summer on a regular basis, and people are still moving there. Like, we're already living the effects of it. It's just people don't realize it because we're like, well, I have AC and I can stay inside and be fine. But we can't. We really can't. We're going to die. So we really need to get that situation under control.
Yeah,
That's
that's a big one. I do think DACA is a big one that we need to be pushing. That's kind of bounced back and forth as a what do you call it? Executive order, and it needs to be legislation. It needs to be put on paper so that a president can't just come back and wipe it clean. And I know Obama kind of fought that because he didn't have any power really as far as his House or Senate. But now that we do have that, I don't know what they've decided on the filibuster within the Senate rules. I don't know how all that went, because that would be the thing that would control if we need 60 votes or if we need 50 votes for a lot of this legislation. Student loan forgiveness is a big one, but I also think if we're going to do student loan forgiveness, we need to do free public tuition for in-state colleges. Like, you can't just tell this generation that your student loans are forgiven and this generation, like, here, go back. And we also need to eliminate student loan interest rates. Like, the government should not be making money off of students. Like, it should be saying, like, yeah, you can borrow money from us and you can pay it back. And if you don't pay it back, it will hurt your credit. But at the same point, yeah, if you want to go to Andrews University and you want to pay 30 grand, you're just going to pay 30 grand. You're not going to pay 55 grand because it took you 20 years to pay it off. Like, that's ridiculous. That's like a big one. And I do think Biden came through with, he halted forms of deportations on January 21, which was a nice, I think he did it for like 100 days or something, where his team was trying to change some of the ways that we look at immigration. And so I think that's good. I think we should halt all deportations unless people are committing like heinous crimes. If we trust the blue as much as we do, we shouldn't need to worry about undocumented immigration, because we have a criminal justice system that will, I don't, this is sarcastic because I don't really trust cops that much. But if we do, we should at least trust them to, police our communities and say, like, hey, this person's actually, not been a benefit to our society, as to where these other folks, yeah, they're here without documentation, but they're just here working with their families. Like, there's no harm in that at all. If you want to pay rent and, pay taxes on your purchases and your income, by all means.
Yeah, and I think he also put a task force together to get the kids that were separated from their parents back together, and they're going to be residing in the state.
The ones that weren't already given to random families.
Yeah, so we don't know how.
A lot of white guilt babies out there.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I think Joe Biden is going to be, the first lady's going to be spearheading that. I heard. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But I mean, it's sobering to think. I mean, it's like, I don't know, when there's just like a fire hose of garbage coming from Trump, you can just like lose track of things sometimes. And I feel like that's just one of those stories that it comes to your mind, you think about, but it can get lost in the cycle of mess that we've seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Especially because it feels like there's not really anything you can do.
Right. For sure. So there was I have a question for you all. There was a lot of talk about, I feel like some of it was like scare tactics, but there was a lot of talk about like how and we were kind of talking about this earlier, how the like moderate wing of the Democratic Party would coexist with the more progressive, like AOC wing, for lack of a better term. And I don't know if that's played out that much thus far, but I guess as we're kind of on the other side of the inauguration and Biden starting to get some things underway, how do you all anticipate, I guess, the ability? So we kind of talked about this whole call for unity between like Republicans and Democrats, but there's been speculation about whether or not the Democrats could be unified. How do you guys think that I guess, has been going, or how do you project that may go going forward as they try to work together to get some stuff done, probably mostly by themselves?
They don't have a choice, these moderates. I really would say they don't have a choice. I think the loudest voices in terms of Democratic voters are the people that are like us. They are millennials, younger voters, and people in Philly, people in Pennsylvania. If you want to get reelected, you best believe a lot of that is going to come down from people in places like Philadelphia, places like Pittsburgh that went blue. You're gonna have to rely on those people, and they went blue because of people that look like us. This is like they need to just start like seeing the signs on the wall, y'all. Like you don't have the right to be moderate where it results in 2 years go by and nothing is done. Because you will lose.
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
Especially since they actually have the votes to get things done now.
Right.
They can't hide gridlock and say, "Well,
those people will get like lambasted, or however you want to say that, whenever they get if it takes a simple majority and one Democrat decides they want to vote. I mean, that person's going to be plastered on MSNBC. And you know what's funny? If Senate and the House were actually intelligent, we can really pinpoint why Trump lost the election, and it was black voters. Like, that's just the reality of why Georgia went to Biden, why Pennsylvania went to Biden. And so there's also this reality that Donald Trump gained black support as well. If the Democrats were smart, they would really push in on anti-racist policy, which would then say we're going to win every election because we're bringing back the black voters that were swinging GOP, and they're swinging GOP because they don't feel catered to. And so if you want to start bringing back Hispanic and black voters, start catering, because white liberals are, for the most part, not just going to disappear. I mean, not to say that they, white people clearly, but like a lot of white liberals are they're for that liberal vote. They're for that progressive movement. And so keep pushing. They want anti-racist and immigration policies and education reform. So like you keep doing that, you're going to keep bringing these people that were like, maybe I should try the GOP out because this one's not really speaking to me, even though, which is ridiculous, Biden actually had a plan for Black America, as to where Donald Trump had a text woke to a number. That was his plan for Black America. Literally under his website, it's like plan Black America text woke to no policy.
That sounds
like 44182. I should have done that just to see like what I get back. How terrible that is, but
I also feel like a lot of it is just like, and I don't know whose job this is necessarily, but I get that there are things that the progressive wing of the party is pushing for that like older black voters, like people who help swing this election maybe don't support, but I think they also don't support it because they don't understand it. And I feel like a huge part of what the Democratic Party does has to be actually like not running away from things that sound scary to people, like defunding the police, like, things like that like sound the alarm bells for people. Actually do the work of educating people on what these things mean and how they're actually not harming anyone.
Yeah.
Because then you can sidestep all of that anxiety about like, pushing too far for things and then whatever, like getting some sort of backlash or, there's lots of things that make just like logical sense if you explain them to people. They just need to be explained, and people need to take on the responsibility of doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like we have like a couple minutes, and my dad wrote a long comment. Oh yeah, this Fox News story. Did you guys hear about this?
Yeah.
Lou Dobbs got fired, and I mean, I saw like the headline on my phone, and it's like I just kind of watch Fox News for comedic effect, so you know, I don't really like pay attention for real. But so I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe y'all have reactions to that, but maybe the quick question is, you know, how do we navigate Trumpism? Because it's obviously not going anywhere. There are people on television who are going to continue to proliferate the lie that he won the last election, or are going to try to amplify his voice and the voices of people that are around him, has millions and millions of supporters that aren't going anywhere. And so how do we sort of navigate a political sphere that, I mean, we can disagree, but that's rooted in just like blatant, bold-faced lies. I mean, that continues to sort of be a drag on the discourse. And, you know, depending on what happens with this impeachment trial, I'm a little worried as to maybe how that may affect how much longer we have to deal with it. But I don't know. What do you all think?
I don't know.
Do we have to? I honestly, like, do we have to navigate it? Can we just can we just?
I mean, yeah.
Every time, like, just galvanize everybody else and just continue. Because I'm at this point, I'm like we were saying earlier, like, who do they need to hear things from? It's like there's nobody that is enough of an authority.
They don't listen to me.
That they will actually listen when they say things that are true.
Yeah.
They're so far deep in that world that anybody who contradicts it,
I'll just find someone else.
Yeah. And so I just don't know. I'm at a point where I'm like, I don't know if trying to navigate it makes sense. Like maybe the more straightforward thing to do is to just be like, do so much that everybody else turns out every time. And maybe over time, because the truth is a lot of the things that people are pushing for will benefit a lot of Trump supporters. Like if you're like a poor white person, you know, like you will benefit from a lot of these policies. And maybe over time, when they actually get to see what these policies look like in real time and how they impact their lives, maybe we'll start to see some sort of shift. But I don't know how you can really navigate as it stands now.
It almost in a very weird way. I feel like that's the Republicans party's problem. Like I don't know if it's something that we have to do. Like this is going to continue to.
They're not going to do that.
Let them right. Like if Trump, you know, he's going to make his own news network because you know Fox is getting sued, so they can't keep talking about the election being stolen. But Trump wants to keep saying it. If he runs again, but he doesn't run as a Republican, that only hurts them. And so I think when we put that into perspective, it kind of goes with what you're saying. Like, we just have to make sure that we're voting and, like, watch as their house burns to the ground.
Yeah, but the thing we have to keep in mind, though, and I think we talked about this in the chat a little bit, one of the reasons why I think we have to at least account for it on some level is you have like Josh Hawley or whatever the heck his name is, for example, who incited a freaking insurrection from the great state of Missouri, right, Logan?
Yes, sir.
And
he doesn't even own a house in Missouri. He shouldn't even be a senator.
Yeah, well, the within the month that he incited an insurrection, he had the largest fundraising month of his political career. He raised like just under $1 million, and so. What does that say to him? Oh, okay, if I keep doing this stuff, I'm going to keep getting that level of support and money. I mean, that's the reason he did it in the beginning. So someone is going to opportunistically inherit that base, and someone like him who is, someone like him who you can sort of proliferate Trumpism in a way that's a little bit more, coded. Is going to even be appealing to those Republicans that held their nose and pulled the lever for Trump because they're going to find something in him that says, oh, well, you know, he has some, he's a senator, he has some diplomacy chops or whatever. So I'm just saying I'm a little concerned about how, that continues to transpire. But to your point, I mean, you can't allow it to paralyze you. They still need to get stuff done. but I think it is going to be
Right.
something we have to account for going forward, for sure.
Maybe like the way to do it is like maybe part of it is on us in terms of like shifting our rhetoric to reflect the fact that our policies actually will be beneficial to everyone. A lot of what throws people off is this idea that like, oh, we're only catering to people of color, immigrants, etc. in this country, and like white people who feel like, you know, abandoned, whatever, by like not only just like the cultural shift in America, but the political rhetoric that's being used. Maybe part of it is on us to shift the language that we're using to say like, actually, like what we are pushing for is not necessarily an identity based on racial identity or gender. A lot of it is based on class and economics, and that's a much more universal experience that maybe people could jump on board with, because that's really what the Republican Party did. They started saying, okay, we're going to use different language to describe policies that will negatively impact Black people. Maybe what we could do is kind of use the same tactics of just saying, let's use different language to describe policies that will positively impact Black people, but will also positively impact lots of other people too.
Trump said, what do you have to lose when you tell Black people?
Yikes. All right. Well, I think we've made it to, well, we're past 9:30 now.
Shout out to George.
6:32.
Yes. Yeah. Shout out to Mr. Smart. It was cool to hop on here with you all. I was a little late, but sounds like we had a good convo. I enjoyed the part that I was here for. Any final words, Logan? Sounds like looks like you have something on your mind, man.
No, I mean, it's just frustrating, the whole situation. These Democrats having to pander in order to pass legislation is just frustrating. I really hope that, I know we didn't touch on it, but I really hope that we can see a complete removal of Donald Trump through the impeachment hearings that are going to come up soon. Because this guy, just like, I haven't heard him say anything in like weeks, and it's been such a blessing. Like, I've been praying for blessings, and this is the answer to prayer. Donald
it's been amazing.
Silenced, but more silencing of Donald Trump would be a blessing.
For sure.
I agree. Shout out to everyone in the comment section. We appreciate you guys and the engagement that you gave us. That was really helpful. It kind of kept the conversation going too. So appreciate you all for tuning in every time we go live, man.
For sure.
Oh, all right, go Lakers.
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that on the way out.
Now it's definitely time to
out.
Well, let's go Knicks. Derrick Rose.